Hello guys, welcome to the Nexoel Trading Hub YouTube channel. So let's head to the chart and look at the forecast for the coming week. This is the dollar index and this is the monthly time frame. Last week we spotted out this rejection block from the monthly time frame and we expected a form of a price pullback to the downside before the bullish continuation to take out our external buy side liquidity. We can see this bearish movement of price to the downside, but the market failed to take out the sell side liquidity. So the buy side became the next draw on liquidity, and we identified the monthly fair value gap, and we saw that the price have not yet mitigated the mean threshold of the monthly fair value gap. We can see the last up close candle before the bearish move to the downside. So I'm expecting to see more deeper push of price into the fair value gap before we can consider any form of bearish movement to the downside, or we could see price aim for this buy side liquidity. So let's drop to the weekly time frame. So here in the weekly time frame, last week we identified this sponsorship zone. We saw that price took out the buy side liquidity here and the buy side liquidity here. We saw the run on this buy side liquidity. And this is our rejection block identified from the monthly time frame. And we expected to see that the market is actually going to push to the downside before we have the bullish continuation to the upside into the monthly fair value gap we identified, in which you can also see we have a fair value gap also in the weekly time frame. So in confluence to the monthly fair value gap and this weekly fair value gap, you can see we have, this is the last down close candle before the bullish move to the upside, and we can see how price gave us this bearish momentum movement to the downside and broke through this order block. So I'm expecting to see deeper push of price into this violated order block, which is within the monthly and the weekly fair value gap. So last week I told us to expect a pullback before we can see the push of price to the upside to take out our external buy side liquidity. In the 4-hour time frame, we actually identify an order block within this zone in which price returned and mitigated and then gave us the bullish move. So for the coming week, I'm expecting to see the push of price to the downside before we can have any bullish continuation. So in extension, I'm looking forward to see that the bullish move reaches into this violated order block. So let's consider this order block as a breaker block. So I'm expecting to see a fall of price, and then we have the bullish continuation to the upside. Since we can see that the market is reacting at the mean threshold of the monthly fair value gap. So let's check out the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, we can see how price pulled back into the zone we identify here. We can see this double Marabuzu candlestick. Price mitigated it and then gave us the bullish continuation. So we can see, just like from the weekly time frame, price is reacting at the mean threshold of the monthly fair value gap. And we can see that the market took out this buy side liquidity. So meaning this order block is not holding price. So we could see further push into this zone we identify from the weekly time frame. So this is what I'm expecting to see in the dollar index, to see we have a pullback into our rejection block zone, and then we have the bullish continuation to the upside. We want to see this movement, and then we want to see the continuation to the upside. So let's check the 4-hour time frame so that we can have a clear perspective or view to that. So here in the 4-hour time frame, we can see how price returned into the order block we identified last week. This is the order block that we identified last week, and we can see how price mitigated the order block because I saw price reacting at the rejection block, and we're having this form of consolidation. So I expected to see the mitigation of this order block and then the bullish continuation. Now, what we can see is that price broke through the rejection block, and we can see this consolidation in price delivery. So I'm expecting to see a pullback into the consolidation. Want to see that price will mitigate the consolidation, and then we have the bullish continuation. So we can see the rejection that price is facing at the mean threshold of the monthly fair value gap. So this is my expectation for the dollar index. So let's check out the Euro USD pair. So guys, this is Euro USD and this is also the monthly time frame. So last week we identified this sell side liquidity, expecting to see that the market would take out the sell side liquidity since we expected bullish price delivery in the dollar index. What we can see in the Euro USD price moved to the upside, failed to take out the sell side liquidity. In the dollar index, we saw that the market failed to take out the sell side liquidity. So in Euro USD, we can see that the market failed to take out buy side liquidity. So the sell side became the draw on liquidity. And below the sell side liquidity, we have this monthly fair value gap. So we can see how price have dipped into the monthly fair value gap, though price have not yet mitigated the main threshold of the Euro USD monthly fair value gap. So I'm expecting to see further fall of price to the downside, but we should expect to see a bullish movement before we have the bearish continuation to the downside. So let's check out the weekly time frame. Here in the weekly time frame, we can see that within the monthly fair value gap zone, we have this strong zone. You can see we have this fair value gap, price return mitigated the fair value gap, and then we have the fall of price. Now we have bullish movements. Price broke through the fair value gap and then also through this rejection block. So the fair value gaps become an inversion fair value gap. And we can see how price return to retest the inversion fair value gap in confluence to this rejection block. And we can see how price respected the mean threshold, closing above the mean threshold. And then we have the bullish movement of price to the upside. So we can see this bullish movement, price failed to take out buy side liquidity. The sell side became the drawn liquidity. So I expected to see that the market would take out the sell side liquidity last week and drop into this zone, which is also the monthly fair value gap zone. And we can also identify this order block, the last sell candle, the down close candle before the bullish move to the upside. So price have returned into that zone. So we may see bullish reaction before we have a bearish continuation to the downside. So let's check the daily time frame. Here in the daily time frame, we can see the higher time frame zone we identify. So I'm expecting to see a pullback of price to the upside. If we're going to have a deeper pullback, then the deeper pullback should be to this price level before we have the bearish continuation. But I do not think we're going to have a deeper pullback. So let's drop to the 4-hour time frame to look at that. So here in the 4-hour time frame, since we are bearish in the Euro USD, so we are expecting to see further fall of price to the downside, since we are expecting the possibility that the dollar index will continue bullish. So for the Euro USD, I'll be expecting to see the pullback of price into the zone, and then we have the bearish continuation back into this zone, which is our monthly fair value gap. So I want to see the drop of price back into the zone. Now, what we can see here is we have this rejection block. Price have been respecting this rejection block. The rejection block provided support to price. Now, price broke through the rejection block. So we're expecting to see how price will pull back to retest this consolidation that price broke through, and then we have further bearish movement to the downside back into the monthly fair value gap we identify from the monthly time frame in the Euro USD. Because when we also apply the trend line, you can see we have this bearish movement of price to the downside. So this is what I'll be looking out for, except price decides to give us a deeper pullback into the zone before we have the bearish continuation to the downside. So this is what I have to show us, guys, in the Euro USD. So let's check out the GBPUSD pair. So guys, this is GBPUSD and this is the weekly time frame. I'm not going into details in this analysis. I just want to give you guys a perspective to what I'm expecting to see in the coming week. So what we can see is that we have the push of price to the downside. Price broke through this order block and the swing low. So we have a valid break of the swing low points. Now we can see price reacting at this order block. We had this order block, price return mitigated, and then the bullish push to the upside. Now price return. So we can see price reaction within this order block. So I'm expecting to see a form of a bullish pullback before we have the bearish continuation, because I'm looking forward to see that price is actually going to take out this sell side liquidity. So let's check the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, we can see the downward trend, but price doesn't necessarily have to give us a deeper pullback before the bearish continuation. So we could see price pull back into this zone, and then we have our bearish continuation to the downside. So let's check out the 4-hour time frame so that we can see a clearer perspective to that. So this is the 4-hour time frame. So what we can see in the 4-hour time frame, since we are seeing that the market is reacting within a sponsorship candle, our order block, so we can expect the possibility of that bullish pullback to the upside. And we can see we have this order block resting here. So we could see the possibility of the market actually pulling back to the upside before we have this bearish continuation to the downside. Since what we can see from the 4-hour time frame is that price reacted at the mean threshold of the weekly order block we identify, and we're seeing bullish movement of price to the upside. So we could see the possibility of a deeper pullback to this order block before we have the bearish continuation to the downside. Except otherwise, the market decides to give a deeper pullback before the bearish continuation to the downside. But I'm expecting to see further bearish movement of price in the GBPUSD pair also. So let's check out the USDJPY pair. This is USDJPY, and this is the weekly time frame. Last week I told us to expect for the bullish move when we see bearish movement to the downside. Wanted to see how price was going to mitigate the open of this bearish candle before we have the bullish push of price. But then we can see that price actually returned to the downside, though price did not mitigate the open of this bearish candle before we had the movement of price to the upside. We identified this zone and we regarded this as our breakout block, since we have the down close candle, the bullish move took out this high, and we saw how price reacted at the main threshold. So we expected to see how price is still going to give us more bullish move after we see the bearish move. Since we're looking forward to seeing that price will take out this buy side liquidity or aim to fill up this fair value gap, since we are expecting more bullish move in the dollar index. What we can see is that the USDJPY didn't really give us a sharp movement last week. So for the coming week, I'm still expecting bullish move to the upside. But let's drop to the daily time frame to look into that. So here in the daily time frame, what we can see is within our weekly zone, we can see this order block, how price have been failing to break through the order block. So I want to see the possibility of price possibly dipping lower before we have the bullish movement to the upside. I want to see the possibility of price returning to this candle, and then we have the bullish continuation to the upside. Let's check the 4-hour time frame. Then the 4-hour time frame, last week we identified this order block, and then I told us we could see price push to fill up this fair value gap, and then we have the fall to the downside before the bullish move. So we can see that price return, fill up the fair value gap, price fell, but then still respected this order block, price return. Now this is our daily order block, and we can see in the 4-hour we have this breaker. Price mitigated the breaker, and then we're having the fall of price to the downside. So we could see price range within this zone before we have the bullish continuation to the upside, or price may fall to the downside to mitigate this zone, and then we have the bullish continuation to the upside. So this is what I'm expecting to see in the USD-JPY pair. So let's look at the USDCHF pair. So guys, this is USDCHF, and this is the weekly time frame. Last week I told us to expect bullish move into the zone. Since we saw how price reacted at the mean threshold, I told us to expect a pullback. because we identified this order block, how price came, retested, push, and then price fell to the downside, violated this order block, and then created this institutional order flow. In Confluence, we have this inversion fair value gap. So I told us to see the possibility that price would give us a deeper pullback to mitigate the mean threshold of this zone before we have the bullish continuation, since the dollar index is bullish. So we're looking forward to this buy side liquidity as our next draw on liquidity. So for the coming week, what we should be looking forward to is also to see more bullish continuation, but I'll be expecting a pullback to the downside to mitigate possibly the 50% of this candle week before we have the bullish continuation to the upside. But let's check out the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, last week we saw within our weekly zone, which is the inversion fair value gap zone and the order flow zone, we identified this order block, which is also within the mean threshold of that zone. So we expected that pullback because clearly within the order block zone we identified from the weekly time frame, we saw this inversion fair value gap in the daily time frame. And you can vividly remember I told us to expect to see pullback and then we buy from here to the upside. You can see how that clearly delivered. So for the coming week, since we can see that price traded above this order block, price have broken this order block, and prices above the mean threshold of the order block and our weekly inversion fair value gap and the institutional order flow. So I'll be expecting to see how price is going to pull back to mitigate this mitigation block, and then we have for the bullish movement of price to the upside. So this is what I'm looking forward to see in the USDCHF pair. So let's drop to the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we can see is price broke through the order block we identify in our daily time frame. So this is our buy side liquidity. This is a drawn liquidity. We are looking forward to see that the market is actually going to raid. You can remember vividly last week, I showed us this order block and I told us to expect a pullback and then reaction from this order block to go bullish. And that is what we can see neatly happened here. Price reacting at the order block last week, and then we saw and expected to see price fall to the downside before we have bullish move. So we can see price closed above the mean threshold of the order block and the weekly inversion fair value gap, plus the institutional order flow. So for our bullish continuation, I'm expecting to see how price dips to the downside, possibly to come mitigate this zone. So this is what I'm looking forward to see. How price would dip lower to the downside and mitigate this IOF, and then we have bullish continuation to the upside. So this is my perspective for the USD-CHF pair. Except the market delivers otherwise, then we can begin to reframe our expectation. So guys, let's check out the gold pair. If you're interested in our mentorship program, you can check the link in the description section to this video, and then you can begin your enrollment process. This is what you really stand to gain with us. You're going to have an understanding of what Forex entails, a lot of things like the Forex players. You're going to have the perspective and understanding of the fundamental types of Forex analysis. We're going to look more into institutional sponsorship candles. We're going to look into practical understanding of market structure. You're going to have a mastery on the market. You're going to have mastery in technical analysis, trading psychology, and you're going to have direct support from mentors in our community. In the mentorship program, it's actually a live mentorship program where sessions are organized and recorded, and then the videos can be sent to you at the end of each of the sessions so that you can go through them. It's a 1-month intensive Forex trading mentorship course program. When you click the link, you can see the course outline and all other benefits you stand to gain in the mentorship program. So you can do well to enroll. It's actually going for $100. Before the coming year, we're looking forward to returning it to the original price. So you can enroll now and enjoy the benefits of the discounts, because some of you have been reaching out directly to the WhatsApp contacts seeking for discounts. So this is that discount opportunity for you. So if you're from Nigeria, you can see what you're going to be paying. This is the amount you're going to be paying within this year. So let's head to the chart to look at the gold analysis. So guys, this is gold and this is the weekly time frame. So last week we saw this fair value gap, how price mitigated the mean threshold. So I told us to expect bullish move, and then we can take bearish movement also further to the downside. But we can see that gold went extremely bullish last week. Well, it's really crazy. We can't really determine what really gold it's actually going to do for the coming week, but we are still going to look at the charts to see. So we can see how we have this momentum bullish candle to the upside. So we could further see more bullish movement of price into this rejection block zone before we could see any possibility of price giving us a bearish movement to the downside. Gold is actually bullish. The entire buyers in gold is bullish. So we just have to look and see what gold is actually going to be doing next week. And then we can frame our trade entries from that. So let's check the daily time frame. Here in the daily time frame, what we can see from gold is that, last week I told us to expect a pullback, but not really deeply into the zone. This was the zone I marked out last week and told us to expect a pullback into the zone, and then we can wait to see structure to frame bearish movements. But what we can see, price broke through that zone, and we can see that the market is heading more bullish based on this movement we had last week. All we can now see is that price is returning to this order block here. So for the coming week, we could see a push to the upside, and then we have this inversion fair value gap in the daily time frame. So for gold, we could see price return to this order block, and then we can see price drop to the downside. If we want to take a bearish movement, then we should be looking at this order block, and this should be where we should be targeting to take our profits at this inversion fair value gap. Since we can see that this order block is in confluence to the weekly rejection block zone we marked. So we must wait to see price delivery at this zone before we can consider taking a bearish move, and then we can take out our profits at this inversion fair value gap, so that we can then look at to see if price is going to continue bullish, or we could just see price further push to the downside. So let's check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, we can see that the zone we marked from the daily is our order block, and here we have this institutional order flow, and we can see how this took out this buy side liquidity. So there's a possibility we may see price reaction here, and then price will fall to the inversion fair value gap. So for the coming week, this is what I would just tell us to expect. To look at what we could see within this zone. If price gives us a bearish structure, then we take a bearish move to our inversion fair value gap. Whatever we see from this zone will determine if we are continuing bearish or bullish. So this is all I have to show us, guys. Till I see you guys next week, or if we could possibly have a daily forecast, then we'll look into that. Cheers, guys, and God bless you all.